dive into Bloodstained Angel. Secrets behind the dim lights of Vietnam's elite. A gripping tale of revenge and redemption. Follow Than, a young woman driven by the tragic loss of her sister, as she navigates a world of opulent parties, ruthless tycoons, and dark secrets. Infiltrating Vietnam's elite, she uncovers a web of corruption led by the powerful Hong Vinh Thing, with suspense, betrayal, and raw emotion. Dear listeners, please lend your ears to the tale that unfolds. The party was held at a seaside villa in Vũng Tàu, ostensibly a birthday celebration for a scion of a wealthy tycoon. All attendees were strictly prohibited from bringing phones or any electronic devices. When I arrived, the villa was already surrounded by supercars. Anh Sáng, my manager, told me that the place even had a private helipad, spacious enough to accommodate a large civilian aircraft. Anh Sáng was my broker, a middle-aged, obese, and greasy man. Most of the money I earned tonight would flow into his pockets. A few days earlier, I had received an invitation from Anh Sáng through the university's internal network to take on a side job. The role was as a receptionist with a payment ranging from 60 to 100 million VND per event. When we met, he bluntly explained that the job involved working at a private party attended by many influential figures. If I performed well, the compensation could exceed what he had promised. While signing the confidentiality agreement, Anh Sáng revealed that the party would include over 20 girls like me, most of whom were dance majors, just like me. I love recruiting receptionists from your dance department. Your faces and figures are flawless, he said, his crude expression making me shudder with disgust. But I still went. Because Anh Sáng mentioned that Hong Vinh Thing, the tycoon of the Hong Jia group, would be there. For years, I had taken every receptionist job at high-end parties. All for one purpose, to one day meet Hong Vinh Thing, the man who destroyed my family. Stepping into the villa, I saw an enormous open-air swimming pool. On a table in the main hall, gifts were piled high. Gucci handbags, jewelry worth hundreds of millions of VND. If you were bold enough, you could even walk away with a VinFast Luxe in a single night. But the price you'd pay, no one tells you that up front. I looked around. The other girls seemed accustomed to the scene. Dressed in revealing outfits, they held champagne glasses, moving freely through the hall, occasionally flashing playful smiles at the decorations. Nearby stood a brightly lit white building, where the men at the top of the financial pyramid observed us. The thought of them watching from above, picking and choosing us, sent a chill down my spine. As the men began to enter the hall, the girls quickly paired up with them, as if it were second nature. A man approached me. He looked young, wearing a gaudy gold chain, exuding the aura of a street thug. I glanced at him for a second before lowering my eyes and turning away. At parties like this, girls also have the right to choose. Clearly, he wasn't the one I wanted. By the rules, he should have moved on to someone else. But to my surprise, he handed me a glass of wine, gesturing for me to drink. I shook my head. He froze, then leaned close to my ear and whispered, "I'm giving you a chance. Don't be ungrateful." My hands trembled, but I stood my ground, unmoving. Luckily, another girl who had been standing alone quickly stepped in and wrapped her arm around his. He spat in my direction, muttering "bad luck," before being pulled away by the girl. After he left, I let out a sigh of relief. In a place like this, anyone could be untouchable. But if Thing wasn't here, this trip would be meaningless. I sat at a corner of the bar, ordered a gin tonic, and mocked myself, another wasted effort. 2 years ago, my younger sister excitedly told me she had been chosen by a film crew to shoot a TV drama in Hana. Since she was little, she had always been attached to me. It was her first time being away from me for so long, but she texted me daily to let me know she was safe. The last message I received from her said she was going to a party with the director. 2 days later, when I saw her again, she was nothing but a cold corpse. A dead body can't speak. I didn't know what she had gone through before she chose to jump from a building on her 18th birthday. The investor behind that film was the Hong Jia Group. The director who took her to that party was Thing. My father hid it from me and went to the Hongjia Group's office, holding a banner demanding justice. He was beaten unconscious by their security and not long after succumbed to depression and passed away. That day, in front of my parents' graves, I swore I would make Thing pay. But after that film, Thing announced he would focus on managing the group, and his whereabouts became even more elusive. I came up with a foolish plan: work as a receptionist at high-end parties, hoping that one day I would meet him. The earpiece of the bartender suddenly buzzed, snapping me back to reality. He answered while glancing at me several times, his eyes full of insinuation. My heart pounded, my breath catching in my throat. After finishing the call, he turned to me and said, "Miss, you're invited to the master bedroom." As I passed another girl, she sneered and muttered, "Damn, is the boss doing charity tonight?" I lowered my head and quickened my pace, my only thought being to collect my payment and leave as soon as possible. I don't know if it was the alcohol, but a burning sensation spread from my chest through my body, my face flushing red. Before entering the room, I glanced back at the gift table in the hall, now nearly empty. That night, what happened between me and Thing in that room is something I never want to recall in my lifetime. There was no pleasure in it. I only caught a glimpse of his face before he yanked me toward him. After that, there was only one sensation: pain, a soul-crushing pain. Unlike the gold chain man, Thing was older, his eyes radiating cruelty. To avoid exciting him further, I bit my lip and endured the entire ordeal. By the end, my lips were bleeding from how hard I'd bitten. When I woke up, he was already gone. I endured the pain to put my clothes back on. My chest and shoulders were barely intact. I couldn't see my back, but it was likely no better. I wrapped myself in a bathrobe, wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth, and climbed the stairs step by step. It took me over 10 minutes to ascend dozens of steps. Each step felt like walking on knives. I knew the girl who mocked me was still staring, but I didn't care. I had to hurry, to move faster. Before Thing left, I needed to see him again. When I saw Anh Sáng, I knew everything was over. He was lying in the middle of the hall, his face bruised and battered from a beating. The one who beat him was the gold chain man I had rejected. Only then did I learn he was the host of this birthday party. That's why, even though he broke the rules first, Anh Sáng could only cower and beg for mercy. The man cursed, "What kind of trash did you bring here?" I stepped forward to pull him away, but he shoved me hard. My bathrobe slipped, exposing the wounds on my shoulders. He sneered with contempt, "Just another whore pretending to be pure." A few bills fluttered down onto my head. He gritted his teeth, "Take it and get lost. Don't let me see you at places like this again." I helped Anh Sáng up, but he pushed me away. I knew he blamed me for cutting off his money. I stumbled, my legs unsteady, retreating a few steps. Then, a pair of hands steadied me from behind. I turned around and froze. It was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. Porcelain skin, a slender figure, and flawless features. "Are you okay?" "Be careful," she said gently, holding my hand. I glanced at her outfit, a burgundy velvet Chanel dress, Christian Louboutin heels, and expensive jewelry. The gold chain man immediately changed his demeanor, fawning as he stepped forward, bypassing me and the girl, and said loudly, "And Thing, I didn't expect you to come in person." The man behind her only grunted in response. My back stiffened, the pain in my wounds intensifying. But I forced myself to endure, adjusted my clothes, and walked through the hall to the exit. I knew Thing was staring at me, but I kept my back straight, avoiding everyone's gaze. I knew I was striking in that moment. Eyes glistening with tears, nose slightly red, strands of hair falling messily over my forehead, adding to my allure. Thing had seen countless beauties. I had to find another way. At Tan Son Net Airport's waiting lounge, I leaned against a cold chair, sipping mineral water. The pain from my wounds kept me from sleeping. My phone rang, startling me. I quickly answered. It was the elegant girl from earlier. I recognized her voice immediately. She said, I'd like to meet you once. The price is negotiable." Though we had only exchanged a few words that day, her hello was unmistakable. She introduced herself as Minin and said she wanted me to be her private dance tutor. After hanging up, I deliberately waited half an hour before accepting her friend request. Looking at the location she sent, my hands trembled uncontrollably. I knew my plan had succeeded halfway. Min An lived in a secluded estate on the outskirts of Saigon. From my rented apartment in District 7, it took over 2 hours to get there. I took a taxi, and as the driver drove further, he finally stopped in front of a small hut in Sichi. The person who greeted me contacted the estate's owner, then switched me to another car to take me inside. The drive took about 10 minutes, the surroundings eerily silent. My instincts told me this place was far more terrifying than the room I had entered that night at the party. Getting out of the car, a middle-aged woman was waiting at the gate. She called me Miss Than and said, "The young mistress is waiting for you in the dance studio." The estate's decor wasn't as ostentatious as the Vũng Tàu villa, but exuded a refined, mysterious air. The closer I got to Minan, the more I felt suffocated. She sought me out, and it surely wasn't just for dance lessons. With her background, she could hire any dance teacher she wanted. But that didn't matter. My goal from start to finish was one thing: to kill Thing. Min An was a quick learner with a graceful figure, not like someone who had never danced. I asked if she had studied dance before. "I think I took some lessons as a child, but I don't remember clearly," she said, staring at the furthest corner of the mirror, as if recalling a distant memory. I didn't press further and continued teaching her basic movements. When Thing appeared, I froze. I was gently guiding Minan's hand toward the mirror. Looking up, I saw him standing at the door, staring at me. I felt like I was struck by lightning, frozen in place. Though my wounds had mostly healed, my body burned with pain. Min An noticed I stopped and followed my gaze. Her eyes turned cold for a moment before she quickly flashed a sweet smile. "Daddy's back," she said, playfully wrapping her arms around his waist. "You've been gone so long, Min An, missed you so much." I forced myself to act normal and greeted Thing. As their footsteps faded, I slowly sank to the floor. For 2 years, I had rehearsed facing Hom Yung Vinton hundreds of times in my mind, thinking I could stay calm. But seeing him in person, I couldn't suppress the urge to tear him apart. That afternoon, as I left the estate, the middle-aged woman handed me an envelope. I squeezed it lightly. The amount was substantial. She said the young mistress had gone with Mr. Thing, and the extra money was an apology. I took the envelope without a word. The next time I saw Hong Von Thing, I knew he recognized me immediately. In that moment in the dance studio, with just one glance, I knew he remembered me, remembered my body. A man who built an empire from nothing, with assets worth billions, wouldn't lack such a memory. During the second lesson, I stayed late in the dance studio, claiming I was preparing for a competition. That's when I encountered Thing, drunk and staggering home. This time we were both sober.
He grabbed my hair in front of the mirror, venting his rage.
I bit my lip and endured. When it was over, he left without looking back. Everything after that went smoothly. I stayed at Thing's house more often. His interest in me grew stronger. From the dance studio to the living room, and eventually he took me to his bedroom. After he was done with me, he tossed me onto the carpet like a discarded pet. But I didn't care, because the way he looked at me was changing. He started sending people to take me to the Hongjia Group's luxury shopping center in District 1, sometimes even gifting me jewelry. Later, he even said he wanted to marry me. The harsh white lights snapped me back to reality. "You said so much. What does this have to do with the case?" The young police officer Tai was visibly impatient. What exactly happened in the villa the night Min An disappeared? Indeed, on October 30th, the estate's secrecy made the investigation difficult. But the police found traces of Min An's blood in Thing's bedroom, turning the disappearance into a murder case. Officer Tai, who hadn't slept all night, had stubble sprouting on his face, his hair disheveled and his eyes bloodshot like a predator hunting its prey. Under his piercing gaze, I felt afraid but shook my head. Officer Tai, I really don't know. Tai glared, pointing at my nose. Don't play dumb with me. After you entered Thing's house, he's now in the hospital fighting for his life. And Min An is nowhere to be found dead or alive, and you say you don't know? Maybe Min An couldn't accept that I was about to become her stepmother and left in a huff, I said, rubbing my forehead helplessly. That night, while Thing and I were in the heat of the moment, I heard the sound of porcelain shattering. Checking, I found the bedroom door ajar. Min An's cat had jumped in, knocking over a vase. Min An followed, saw the scene on the bed, and screamed as she lunged at us. I only pushed her lightly, and she got a small scratch. Officer Tai, you said it was just a bit of blood. Min An probably just left in anger. She'd be back soon. At that moment, his walkie-talkie crackled. Tai glanced at me, annoyed, and picked it up to listen. The other side seemed to report something important. He paused and responded, "Got it." Perhaps realizing pressure wasn't working, his demeanor shifted as he adjusted his interrogation strategy. Tiengasi Than. You know Min An isn't Thang's biological daughter. She's no different from you, right? And if she saw you at that first party, why would she lose control just from catching you two together? My heart skipped a beat, unable to guess Tai's intentions. Fortunately, I had been locked in this interrogation room since yesterday morning, nearly 24 hours. If I could hold out a little longer, Thang's people would come to get me out. I would become his lawful wife and own 10% of the Hongjia Group's shares. I forced myself to stay calm. Whatever happened in that room was a matter of morality, not something Tai could control. Looking up, my eyes no longer showed panic. Officer Tai, Thing always treated Min An like his own daughter. As for what you said, I don't understand what you mean. Also, 24 hours must be up. As far as I know, you don't have a warrant to detain me, do you? If you keep me longer, that's illegal detention. Tai glanced at his watch just as someone knocked on the interrogation room door. As he escorted me to the police station's exit, he looked at the private car waiting by the road with a meaningful glance. I nodded politely, but Tai suddenly called out, his voice soft. Miss Than, Thing gave you so much jewelry. Why do you still wear the necklace from 2 years ago? 2 years ago, when your sister's case happened, you came here to report it, didn't you? I didn't stop, heading straight to the car. That necklace was the first gift my sister gave me, and I've worn it every day since. I sat in the back of the black Mercedes, next to Thing in an expensive suit. The entire ride, he stared at me as if admiring a prized work of art. And Thing, please keep your promise. Marry me and transfer the shares, I said, cutting to the chase.
He thought for a moment, nodded, and said, "All right."
I looked out the window, my fingers tracing the necklace I had just taken off. Tai was wrong about one thing. I'm not like Min An. Thing needed a woman like me, someone as greedy and ruthless as he was. Min An was too pure, destined to be discarded by him sooner or later. I knew Thing had had many beautiful girls.
He categorized them, sending them to the beds of big shots to secure favors.
He ventured into the entertainment industry, then transitioned to the business world, climbing step by step, unstoppable. When he met Min An, he was already rich enough. Min An's parents, ruined by gambling, had handed her over to him to settle their debts, along with her widowed aunt. Every time her aunt came to ask Min An for money, she cursed her as a filthy seductress, shaming her for being a mistress. One night, Min An's aunt, drunk, caused a scene in the hall. After that, Min An never saw her again. From then on, Min An was trapped in this gilded cage, with Thing becoming her lifelong nightmare. She told me she suffered from severe claustrophobia. But Thang's greatest pleasure was locking her up. First in a wardrobe, then in a suitcase. I was locked in a suitcase, placed in the corner of his room, watching him with other women. Sometimes for hours, she said, her face expressionless, but her eyes a deep well of hatred. He left a small gap for me, Min An recounted, her long legs curled up, her body folded into the giant suitcase like a fetus in the womb. That day, Min An came to me, asking me to take her place. Tithan, I can give you my life. You'll never have to worry about money again. I agreed. I stayed, and she left. For me, that was the best outcome. I just didn't expect Thing would kill her. That night, Min An burst in, holding a shard of porcelain to her slender neck, demanding that Thing let her go. Haven't I already found you a replacement? Why are you still keeping me? Her eyes were red, like a crazed animal. Thing thought she was just jealous and tried to embrace her. In her struggle, she scratched him. I had seen Thing angry before terrifying, like he could devour someone alive. A dog that bites its master cannot be kept. In Thang's eyes, Min An was just a dog. He didn't want to wait any longer and decided to kill her. I was kicked out of the room. When I saw Min An again, she was in a worse state than I had been that night at the party. She was barely clinging to life. Her final wish before dying was to leave that place. Sister, I was brought here by my aunt when I was very young. At first, I cried and he beat me. Later, I stopped crying and stopped speaking. I envied your sister. Even in death, I don't get to choose. If you can, please do one last thing for me. Let me die outside. I knew, in Thang's eyes, Min An was already dead. The next one would be me. But I didn't want to die. I couldn't die. Because I still hadn't made Thing pay. I told him I loved him and offered to handle Min An's body. I could take the risk of murder for him. But if I walked out of the police station, he had to marry me and give me 10% of the Hongjia Group shares. The wedding took place at a 5-star hotel in central Saigon, attended by many influential figures. Even the media was there. The wedding of the Hongjia Group's tycoon was hailed as a modern-day Cinderella story. I smiled gracefully, arm in arm with Thing, greeting the guests. The people at the wedding were his core connections. I memorized each one, knowing they might be useful later. During a break in the reception, I slipped into the smoking room. On the way, I met a beautiful girl. I remembered her. At the Vũng Tàu party, she had mocked me as a charity case. Now she lowered her head, timidly calling me Mrs. Thing. She probably thought I was a country girl who got lucky, turning from a dry branch into a phoenix. I didn't want to engage, sidestepping her to enter the room, where I sat on the carpet and smoked half a pack of cigarettes. On social media, news of Thang's wedding was trending. I logged into a prepared account and shared the hottest post, adding the caption, "From now on, we'll walk this path together." At home. Then Thing, soon after, Thing shared my post. This was part of our agreement. I wasn't foolish enough to stay in the shadows. Later, I could enter the entertainment industry and build my own career. This wedding was the perfect publicity opportunity. I turned off notifications, but my phone kept buzzing. Standing by the window, watching Saigon's lights at dusk, I knew that everything I wanted, I would achieve step by step. A year later, at the premiere of a new film funded by the Hongjia Group, I appeared as vice president, while Thing, the lead investor, sat in the center of the auditorium. I noticed Officer Tai in the corner, dressed in civilian clothes, wearing a cap. He had been watching me for days. I refocused, answering questions from the MC and the audience. One audience member grabbed the microphone and asked how Thing and I met. I feigned shyness, glancing at Thing. He was looking at me as if no one else existed. I had to admit he was a good actor. If he hadn't been with another girl in front of me the previous night, I might have believed he loved me. We met at a private party, I said. The audience teased and laughed. I made a she gesture and the room fell silent. I pretended to ponder, then continued. That private party was very stimulating. Thing and 9 other tycoon heirs treated us like dishes to be chosen. Don't understand what choosing dishes means? Then take a look at this. I signaled the girl operating the projector, and images from that night appeared on the screen, sex toys scattered around, and several unmasked men, all powerful figures who had attended my wedding with Thing. The reporters at the scene went wild. Despite security's efforts to stop them, they frantically snapped photos. But Thing and Officer Tai had disappeared. I guess they had seen my real name accusation post. I had arranged for my MCN company to schedule the release of that evidence. All the evidence was collected by Min An and me: videos, recordings, and a detailed map of this criminal network. The materials were so thorough they were enough to ensure Thing could never recover. This expose at the premiere was my special gift to him. The flashing cameras, the humiliation, the pain he caused my sister, I would take it all back from him, piece by piece. Moreover, I had recently leaked information to make Tai suspect me again. Now it worked perfectly. He could take Thing to where he belonged. That day, Min An told me I reminded her of a girl she once knew. She was a minor actress who later jumped to her death. Min An was at the film set and witnessed, under Thing's direction, that actress being freely violated and humiliated by male actors. But after her suicide, the case wasn't pursued due to lack of evidence. Min An had photographed the evidence and kept a copy but didn't dare make it public. As she told me about that girl, I grew increasingly panicked. Because that girl was my sister, Quian. When Min An showed me the photos, my heart felt like it had been carved out. In the pictures, Quian was at the film set, with a male actor dumping leftover food on her head. The people around laughed as if nothing was wrong, while Quian curled up in a corner, like a wounded deer. She no longer dared to resist. The party she attended before her death, I had experienced it myself. Min An couldn't bear to share the details, but I begged her to continue. My sister endured so much pain but never told me a word. If I hadn't found her secret blog and learned how much she suffered, I might have believed she took her own life due to illness. The day I learned the truth, I knelt before my parents' graves, sobbing uncontrollably. Mom, Dad, I didn't take care of her. But the one who hurt her, I'll make him pay. To bring down Hong Vin Thing, the power of Min An and me alone wasn't enough. Min An told me about another girl who once had a recording of the scene and tried to expose Thing's crimes. But the audio was quickly taken down, labeled as fake news. That girl was branded a whore and vilified by society. Min An's eyes were red as she said, "Sister, only the two of us can do this." She was right. If we rashly released Min An's evidence, Thing would remain unscathed. Only by gaining his trust, becoming his wife, could I succeed. As Thing's wife and a shareholder of the Hongjia Group, I could use this solid evidence to make a public accusation. Then, the public would have to believe, and Hong Yiding have no escape from the law. A year later, I sat in the District 1 police station again. Tai sat across from me, looking much more mature. He handed me a stack of photos. The person in them wore a hat, sunglasses, and a mask. Fully covered, but it was clearly me struggling to drag a large suitcase. The suitcase was big enough to hold an adult. Tai looked at me like a true criminal. "Tithan, do you realize you've become just like Thing?" In his eyes, I saw myself as a soulless husk. I didn't answer directly, sinking into my memories. "Officer Tai, my sister is dead." Her last message to me, I didn't even have time to reply. Do you think she blames me for not understanding her pain? But now I've avenged her. I suddenly burst into laughter, laughing until tears and snot streamed down my face. The day my sister jumped, I was in the same police station. I knelt, begging the busy officers to stop and seek justice for her, but without evidence, I was told to go home. Back then, Tai was just an intern, helping me up and giving me a glass of water. Now, in his official police uniform, he slammed the table in front of me, staring into my eyes. "Tithan, do you know that helping someone dispose of a body is a crime?" I feigned innocence. "Who said Min An is dead?" Tai froze, waiting for me to continue. That day, I carefully bandaged Min An's wounds, secretly gave her anti-inflammatory medicine, and contacted Anh Sáng to pick her up from the estate. He had been running my MCN company and had made a decent profit. At that moment, I thought of the first time I met Min An, her burgundy velvet dress, her gentle smile. Later, every time she smiled, I felt she grew more fragile. That day, I whispered in her ear, "Min An, you won't die. I couldn't save my sister. This time, I won't lose you." I saw her eyelashes flutter faintly. I took Min An's body out of the estate. She still had a faint breath. I knew Thang's people would arrange for photos, so I placed her in a large suitcase. That suitcase, once her nightly nightmare, saved her from that hell that day. Tai, sitting across from me, understood and suddenly smiled. A few days later, he told me the authorities had formed a special task force to investigate the dark forces behind the Hongjia group. I knew then that Min An and I were finally safe. On the full moon of 2015, I was released from prison and went to the GVP cemetery to reunite with my parents and sister. Seeing a bouquet of white chrysanthemums already placed at their graves, I stood in a daze. Suddenly, a sweet voice called, "Sister," like a summer breeze. I turned around and there was Min An, tilting her head and smiling at me. She said, "Sister, you came to visit our parents too." Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel to not miss the next exciting story.